You're listening to the Plane Talking UK podcast, the UK-based podcast written by a passenger for anyone. And here are your hosts, Carla Stebbings, Matt Smith and Neville Bounds.
Well, hello and welcome to episode number 221 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carl Stebbings, and joining me back in the kitchen studio again this week, it is my co-host Matt Smith.
Buongiorno.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, we started on time.
Yes.
It's amazing.
That's normal.
It's amazing.
That's normal. I don't know what you're on about.
So, how are you?
Living life's eternal dream.
Good.
Every single day.
Good.
How about you?
Well, I thought just for a change this week, I would don a different cap or different hat for the show. We've got a few comments from the chat room. Most of them
not all
good.
of them positive, it has to be said.
But no, hello everyone.
I do think Don Carlos is the new favourite. Yeah, absolutely.
And we are also going to mention this week again. Nev is not with us. Nev is currently on honeymoon with Mrs. Nev, and apparently they travelled to the airport in the banana.
Right.
And
okay. I'm sorry, why? Some kind of euphemism there.
And they're on the honeymoon. So if you're listening, Nev, which you're probably not because you're enjoying yourself.
Hopefully he's on his honeymoon with his wife.
On the honeymoon. I hope you have a lovely time, Nev, and all the best from us here, as always. So Nev's not with us, but we have got two incredibly special guests with us this week.
Yes. Super subs, I like to refer to them as.
Yes.
We haven't got one for very long.
No.
But,
So we're going to introduce the certain guest who can't stay with us too long, but he's got to go to bed and get his beauty sleep. So welcome onto the show. He's everyone's favourite pal. It's Captain Al.
Very good evening. And on the subject of beauty sleep, yes, you will all know that I will need quite a considerable amount of beauty sleep to make myself look as beautiful as Carlos does in that ridiculous hat.
I don't think so. I think, to be fair, you could go without sleep and look better. But there we are. That's just my personal opinion.
How are things with you, Al? Where are you in the world?
So currently I'm in Cluj-Napoca, which isn't necessarily featuring on many people's radar as to where it is in the world, but it's in Romania. We're in Transylvania, and about 40 minutes flying time to the north of Bucharest.
Ooh, very good.
So you're on a kind of layover. Are you off flying again at some point soon?
No, I did Paris and back this morning, just around about 2.5 hours each way. That was really nice, actually, because my first officer had his parents on board, and it was the first time he'd had the opportunity to fly his parents.
Aww.
So we were able to do a few nice things, get some photos. We arrived early into Paris, and we had a longish turnaround in Paris, so we were able to get them on the flight deck, take pictures and that sort of thing. And it was nice, actually. It was one of those opportunities that you have to make someone feel quite
really
special. And his mum and dad were really, really pleased. So that was nice for all of us, really.
Yeah.
And then I came back, had a little bit of a snooze this afternoon, met up with a work colleague of mine. We went for a curry. And then I got soaked to the skin in a heavy downpour.
Right, okay. It's like being at home, Al.
Yes, yeah. We had a pretty big thunderstorm, as usual, for this part of the world at this time of night. So it had about a good sort of 6 inches of rain on the roads in less than half an hour.
Goodness me, that is absolutely crazy. So,
it's bad when the water is coming over the top of your shoes.
Right, yes, a bit moist out. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Matt,
wear flip-flops, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, Matt, who else have we got joining us?
I don't know. I think I can only tell from the picture that we've got here that he's actually in Australia because it's upside down. Yes, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the legend. It's the old curmudgeon himself. It is the legendary Sir Captain of Nick. How are you, sir?
G'day, mate. Yeah, things pretty big down here. Really enjoy myself. I think it's the
you need to have a fiddle with your didgeridoo there. Nothing's gone wrong.
No, I think you'll find my didgeridoo is in perfect working order.
Okay.
So, we're pretty good down here, thanks very much.
I want to know how you've managed to stick everything to the ceiling so that it's all just sort of, I mean, it's
even his hair is
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd have thought it'd be more pointy down, but perhaps an age thing. I don't know.
How's that?
That's much better. There we are.
There we go. So, no, things fine, thank you very much. much. Shays Anderson. I'm sitting here waiting for a couple of medical appointments before I can get back flying again. But before then, I've got a lovely holiday in Cornwall coming up. So I think you'll probably find I'm not going to set foot inside an aeroplane until next month. So but when I do, they'll probably have to...
Some cunning planning there.
Yeah,
exactly.
indeed.
I'll have to restart my training all over again.
All over again, yeah. It'd be like you'd never flown one before, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. But, I've got to find that button. That all-important takeoff button.
Yes, the takeoff and landing buttons.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly right.
They may, of course, change the labelling since you were last in one, so who knows? I mean, anything's possible.
Yes, it might be. What would they call a takeoff button if they didn't call it a takeoff button?
Get Gone. Answers on a postcard, please, from the chat room would be eternally grateful. Obviously, family-friendly ones only.
Button.
Yeah.
No,
That's what we call it down here in Suffolk and Norfolk. We got a Get Gone button.
A get what?
Get Gone.
A get gone.
Get Gone.
Wow.
Okay.
So
This is
the
a treat.
15th of June.
It is all day.
All day. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 7 in the evening. Going to say a big welcome to everyone who's joined us in the live chat room this evening. Loads of names in there. Going to run through
all
quickly.
The usual suspects.
All the usual suspects. Graham Haley, Jonathan Warner, Jennifer Parkinson, Chris Turnbull, Liz Piper, Auntie Liz, hello. Shorty Crosgrove. We've got Lane Street, Mariana. Tony S, Ray Davis as well.
Hello,
in the chat
Ray.
room.
Long
Hello,
time no
Ray.
see, yeah.
He's working hard, I expect, securing the security of security things. And
So you've reeled off the list of people who are going to be absolutely delighted that I'm not going to sabotage the military tonight. Then,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
and Graham
I
Haley
did
as well.
notice there was very little military news.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm
We've
sorry.
got a lot to fit in today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't play my Rome thing last week because we actually ran out of time.
Yeah, we literally did.
Yeah.
We did run out of time a bit, didn't
We
we?
did,
Yeah.
yeah.
But welcome everyone who's joined us in the live chat room this evening. So don't forget, we've got what we got to. We got a segment from Matt with his Rome trip.
Yes.
Coming up later on. We've also got one of the interviews that me and Nev done at Brunting Thorpe.
One of the interviews that myself and Nev did.
With myself and Nev did at Brunting Thorpe, which
Done,
is
honestly.
with the
You're so
Tornado
Norfolk.
GR1,
Yeah.
and which looks stunning because Nev's camera is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's coming up later as well. But we have got the news to start off with. So we are going to start the news show, as we do each week when I run down, of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if you're ready, Matt.
I was born ready.
And Captain Al.
Yes, I'm ready.
And Captain Nick.
I could just go and get a beer.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just play the titles.
Let's go anyway.
Sorry, it's just maybe something in the chat room just made me laugh. Jonathan Warner says you have to do the military. I'm here today.
Okay.
Good point.
So, kicking off this week's first news story, so as not to upset anyone, but we're going to make someone's day very good here, who's Auntie Liz, because the first news story this week on travelpulse.com website. So, Canadian airline Swoop receives final approval for maiden flight. So, Canadian low-cost carrier Swoop announced on Tuesday the airline had been granted its operating certificate, or
Sorry,
AOC.
maybe the connection. Is this airline called Poop?
Swoop.
Oh, right,
Swoop.
okay, sorry,
Swoop,
with an S.
That was last week's stories.
Yeah. Oh, no.
so,
Moving on.
Swoop officials are currently preparing for the June 20th inaugural flight. That's not far too
They've
far away.
not thought this out clearly, have they? Because, I mean, what's the airline going to be known as if it's going to be a low-cost airline?
Okay, I didn't quite catch
Well,
that.
hopefully Swoop.
Yeah, something
I was
along
going to say
those
Al was Skyping them, but we're not. We're not
no,
using
we don't use
Skype.
that. No,
We don't use that.
no, indeed.
But apologies for the internet connection where Al is. He's trying to use the hotel Wi-Fi now. Obviously,
Yeah, we've
notoriously,
just had quite a big flash of lightning, so that the lights went out.
Oh no! Oh, blimey! Oh gosh!
So receiving the air operator certificate ticks the last checkbox, said Swoop's CEO and President Stephen Greenway. We said we're immensely proud of the Swoop in-flight maintenance and operations team for getting us there, and we're ready for takeoff on the 20th of June. When it begins operating, Swoop will become the only ultra-low-cost carrier in Canada. With a strong balance sheet, a modern fleet of Boeing 737-800 aircraft.
How did I know airplane's been around since before I was born.
Before you were born? Wow.
Well, before any of us were born, actually.
Goodness me, really?
All they've done is put a new coat of paint and bent the wings.
It does look like, because it doesn't look like the sharklets, does it? It does look like a very
just bent the wingtips up with a spanner or a pair of pliers or something.
Right, indeed. Yeah, that's what I first think of when it's just like, oh dear.
So if you want to learn more about Swoop's destinations and schedules, the ultra low-cost model, check out the airline's official website. And it's safe to say they've got definitely an eye-catching colour scheme.
Yes.
Rather interesting shade
not entirely
of purple.
dissimilar to a certain Wizz airline. It's quite similar in the same colour schemes and stuff, isn't it? Yeah. They're not called Swoop, though, I'm pleased to say.
They're not called
Swoop and Wizz. Right. Okay. Anyway.
Do you know there are companies out there who specialise in advising corporate bodies on what colours to have their logos in?
Really?
Because apparently different colours have different meanings. So, like purple and pink and so forth will have... I mean, it's amazing that you can make your living on advising on colour, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's true. I wondered where you were going with this, is the fact that there are companies out there that can help them with such things, and they choose none of them.
Well, I mean, we must be only one step away from having someone feng shui the interior of an airliner.
Yeah. I'm sure it's been done in some...
You mean they haven't in Wizz? I was going to say Swoop, your little nickname there of poop, which is probably going to be what it's called. You looked at the logo on the tail and how much that represents their nickname? It looks just like an airplane that's...
Oh, yes.
Oh no.
Yes.
There you go.
Answers on a postcard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can Matt put that on the screen?
Yeah, he can.
He's gonna. There we go. So we've got an aircraft that's got
having a poo.
No, it's not. It's leaving a chemtrail.
Is it?
That's what that
Oh, no.
aircraft's doing,
Actually, while we're here, you should ask Alexa. No, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Alexa, what's a chemtrail?
Chemtrails refer to the trails of condensation or contrails.
Alexa,
jet engine.
shut up.
Fair enough. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, she got it right this week.
She got it right this week, yeah.
Okay. Well, there we are.
That's not the answer she gave me
It's such a shame,
before.
actually, because you probably haven't got a speaker on in the studio, have you? I could use Alexa to order you some pizzas.
Oh, no. Yeah. No, we're not that stupid. That's why we wear earphones. That's why we wear earphones. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, dear. Anyway, so I forgot what we were talking about. Something about Swoop and aeroplanes having a poo. I'm really confused.
Yeah, I see that their logo automatically shows a strategic lateral offset
Right.
that needs to be applied, which we'll probably come on to later in the show.
Right,
Okay, so moving swiftly on to
okay.
the next story, Matt.
Yeah,
And
okay.
this is actually good news for,
It is, yeah,
for
absolutely.
people
And
in this area.
It actually, believe it or not, it actually made Look East, which is our local BBC news programme here. It actually made that.
And I'm flying from
a
there
couple of days.
in a week and a
Oh,
half's
are
time.
you?
Well,
Are
a
you
week's time, sorry.
I didn't know that.
Week's
With
time.
which airline?
I'm flying with Air Malta, funnily enough.
there's a surprise.
To Malta,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
You're driving all the way down to Southend.
Southend, yeah, I am.
That's a bit of a journey for you. You're probably better off getting the tunnel under the channel and just driving there
Just
yourself.
go driving yourself. Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
it's what's it, an hour and 3/4 from here?
Yeah, it is genuinely only about. It's roughly the same for us to
It's
Stansted
rough.
as it is
Yeah,
to
you're
see.
right.
Right.
On that.
Yeah, roughly about the same time it takes to get to
You
Stansted,
fit
does
in
it?
with your hat.
Oh, whatever. Is that the entire terminal? That's
That's pretty much it.
picture?
Yeah,
Pretty much it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's a bit like Norwich, only with like heating.
I've seen greenhouses bigger than that.
Right. Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, so what's going on at Southend
If I remember
Airport?
rightly, it's owned by Stobar.
That's
It
correct.
is,
Yeah,
yes.
Stobart.
Southend, rather, airport.
Yep.
Ah, which brother though? Because haven't they had a bit of a falling out?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Stobart
I mean,
family.
none of it's green, so I'm guessing not the one that is involved with the lorries.
Could be.
Indeed. Anyway, this is on the Guardian.com website, and the headline is Ryanair to open new base at London Southend Airport. Ryanair is to open a new base at London Southend Airport in April 2019, despite its concern for UK aviation after Brexit. The Irish airline expects to carry around 1 million passengers a year from the Essex airport, largely to Spain and Italy. Ryanair has been vocal in its criticism of Britain's plans to leave the EU and the possible effects on the industry, and has said that it would pivot growth away from the UK. The airline's chief commercial officer, David O'Brien, said that don't confuse this great news as some kind of vote of confidence in the future of UK aviation. He said Ryanair was only expecting to grow its UK business by 4%, compared with 21% in Germany in 2018. The €300 million investment in basing 3 planes at Southend is to be accomplished by the airline's closing Glasgow airport base because of low demand. Southend's deal with Ryanair will double passenger numbers at an airport that only reopened 6 years ago. Its rapid expansion is set to continue, according to the chief executive of its owners, the Stobart Group. We have clear and focused strategy to grow our airport to welcome over 5 million passengers by year 2022, he said. O'Brien said disruption from European air traffic control strikes, primarily in France, could be the worst ever for airlines, which cancelled 1,100 flights in May. Your tourist going from Britain down to Spain is screwed by a couple of hundred French air traffic controllers. I'm not quite sure.
I'm not
quite sure what this has got
family-friendly show.
I'm not quite sure what this has got to do. It's in the Guardian. No, apparently not. It's the airline is lobbying the EU to demand a notification period of at least 72 hours for industrial action. I'm not quite sure where that last bit came from the Guardian.
I'm sure the tourists going down to Spain aren't expecting to be screwed by a couple of hundred French air traffic controllers, are they?
Well, only if they flash their lights.
Well, indeed, absolutely. Sounds like a good night. No, sorry.
Dear.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, it is news, I suppose, of some description. It's good news for Southend.
Certainly is. Yeah, it's been interesting to see what that airport is like to fly out of.
Yeah. Well,
I've heard good
you're
things.
going down there.
I've heard good things.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
So
how long have they been? How long have Malta been flying out?
A month.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that new.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Have any of you two guys flown in or out of Southend at all? No, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Oh, you have.
Oh.
Yes.
Brace
Has
yourself.
it actually got a runway?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Was that commercially or privately, Al?
I've done both, actually. I've taken an A320 in there some years ago. And I've also done a little bit of GA flying out of Southend many years ago.
Wow.
And I cannot remember why I took a 320 there. I'm going to guess that it was something to do with being painted, but I cannot remember why.
Okay. Not a sort of unscheduled diversion.
They were looking for the graffiti look, were they?
Yeah, just leave it on the tarmac long enough and
No wheels covered in graffiti.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if I remember rightly,
Wheels up on
the
blocks.
runway at Southend was extended a few years back, and it has Class D airspace around it now, which it never used to have. And am I not right in thinking that it's actually London Southend Airport?
That is correct, yes.
That is right.
Absolutely, yes.
Just
There's an O in London. In fact, 2 to be precise.
I'm sorry, what?
Just a Welshman.
Oh,
it's like we've said before. It's like London, Edinburgh, and London.
Oh, don't get me started.
London, Dublin Airport, and London.
Yeah, but to be fair, and it's unusual for me to be siding on the.
This is frightening news. Yes, indeed.
But there's actually, Southend is pretty close to London. There are very good rail links from the airport,
there are,
if I remember rightly.
In fact, actually,
run by
yeah,
Stobart.
I can say one of the articles that I was reading when they were talking about it, actually, because the Crossrail link is actually going to terminate very close to Southend. So, I mean, actually, from London, you've got incredible high-speed train links between London and Southend now, or will have when they're finished. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know what it's like.
It's got to be as close as Gatwick.
Oh yeah,
it's definitely closer for us.
Yeah, it's definitely easy. Yeah, definitely closer for us. Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I didn't mean to you. I meant as into like.
Oh no! It's all about.
I mean,
it's all about us.
Me, but the world does not revolve.
Oh dear, what a shame! It's breaking up. Oh, what a real shame.
Meridian, is it? We don't have bungie time, do we? You know,
No, but
really,
the big problem we have here, as well you know, Al and Nick, is that to get anywhere from where we are, you have to travel. You have to travel 4,000 miles to get anywhere in this town. So
I know. Oh dear.
Anyway, so.
Even Domino's don't deliver.
They do. Excuse me, I'll have you know.
Yeah.
How do you think I keep this rather beautiful and pristine figure?
Well, it is. Carlos, is there anything to the rumour that bungee jumping actually started near you?
The only jumping that goes on near here is parachute jumping.
I beg your
pardon.
I really wasn't sure where you were going there for a minute.
I'm more than happy to show you the that particular site next time you're this way.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Anyway, moving on swiftly on to the next story. So, Captain Nick, this next story.
Well, I was going to say Nick's more than familiar with that site. That's why the headlamps have stopped working on his car.
Moving on.
That's very true.
So, Nick, what's this next story then all about?
Apparently from dside.com. Is that near Teesside? Just a little further down earlier in the alphabet, I guess. So it's all about Airbus's Beluga XL, which is on track for its first flight following ground tests. And I have to say, if you're going to put the picture up, of all the grossly inflated, horrible-looking air transport bit component flying airplanes that are manufactured by Airbus and Boeing, this actually has to look the best. They've made it look, apart from the fact that it's kind of got a bit of a hump at the front, they've made it look quite sexy. I love the way the cockpit sort of swoops down. I mean, compare that with the bin liner transport, which is, what is they call that?
Dream lifter.
Yeah. The bin lifter. That would be the garbage truck that comes down your street. Right. Anyway,
okay,
I'm being distracted. The story says Airbus's first Beluga XL, the new heavy lifter, being built in Toulouse, which will take wings from Broughton to Airbus sites across Europe, is edging closer to its maiden flight. The Beluga XL is now in its heavy ground test phase, which apparently, according to the photograph, means they have to balance it on its tail. Ground test phase, which focuses on the highly modified airframe for this next generation oversized cargo plane. The tests are in preparation for its upcoming maiden flight later this summer. According to the ground test project leader, Matthew Lemille, a total of 72 development and certification ground tests must be performed before the Beluga XL's high-profile first flight, which is planned for this summer. With more than 48 tests already completed, we are on time. The big challenge was to be able to anticipate or modify the test schedule so as not to impact final assembly. Airbus says it has succeeded in keeping things on track. It's not a train, guys. Thanks to the early analysis of the requirements and excellent multidisciplinary collaboration between design office, labs, tests, and program teams. Oh, that's a bit of management speak if I ever heard it. Heavy ground tests started with the team weighing the #1 Beluga XL at pitch 0 and then at pitch 9, lifting the aircraft's nose by 3.5 meters to determine the empty weight center of gravity. Oh, that's an interesting thing. I assumed they did it on computers, but I didn't realize they physically measured the C of G.
Wow.
Next, they performed the standard loads and horizontal tailplane tests, which were followed by separate evaluations involving the dorsal fin and vertical tailplane. The heavy ground test phase involves carrying out tests on the aircraft that would usually be conducted on a static cell. It's unusual for us to perform tests like a load calibration using the generalized finite element method of analysis on an aircraft which will fly, as we usually use a dedicated clean aircraft without any systems inside, explained Beluga XL aircraft configuration leader Arnaud Puyo. Really?
We'll go with that. Why not?
Yo. The team then began ground vibration testing performed in conjunction with the French Onera Aerospace Research Center and DLR, the German Aerospace Research Center. The 8-day ground vibration campaign, oh my God, which began on the 28th of May, saw the Beluga XL tested while both empty and fully loaded. The activity required 1 week of intense. This is just, if I was an engineer, I'd be in the seventh heaven reading this, but unfortunately I'm a pilot. They blah, 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 shake the airplane, vibrate the airplane, structural dynamic models, blah, blah.
I mean, I don't know. It depends. If it depends who you're with on it. But I mean, a whole, day of vibrating. I mean, it could be quite a nice way to spend your day.
It could be exhausting.
Right.
Yes, right. Let's not go there. With the ground vibration test now complete, subsequent steps ahead of the aircraft's maiden flight include validating the flight test instrumentation and applying the Beluga XL special smiling livery. There you go. They're going to stick the smiley face on.
Yeah, you're quite
Starting in mid-2019, the Beluga XL will gradually replace the existing 5-member Beluga ST fleet, which is used for carrying complete sections of Airbus aircraft from different production sites around Europe to the final assembly lines in Toulouse, France, Hamburg, Germany. Yes. Preparation work has begun at Broughton, which is needed to allow the Beluga XL to operate in and out of Hawarden Airport. Why is it a bit small?
Harden.
No, Hawarden. I've just read it.
No, Harden. It's in Wales. It's Harden.
Well, then it would be spelled H-A-R-D.
Just in case
what's the W-A-R in the middle for?
Yeah, just in case I'm Skyping, I'm not saying hard on.
Right.
Okay?
Oh, dear.
Matt, just ban him.
Yeah, no, I know. I have to say, actually, I was having an email conversation with one of our listeners, a chap by the name of Nick Wilson, and I said he was actually saying good luck keeping you two control. I think I think officially, Nick, I have now lost control. Yeah,
it's bad enough that Pilot Pip can't say Harden properly, let alone you.
Well, I'm an Englishman.
Yeah.
Anyway, the work includes resurfacing the runway, new turn pads at both ends of the existing runway, and an erection. Well,
Good. Of 3 blast fences.
Of 3 blast fences, one to each end of the runway and one adjacent to the existing Beluga apron.
You know that clean rating. You know that clean rating we used to have on our iTunes listing.
Yeah.
I think we're about to lose that. Anyway, that's very good. You did well, sir. You soldiered on. I'm impressed.
That was a fascinating thing on a very fat, ugly airplane.
No, brilliant. Yeah,
the show title for you.
Well, that is that. Yeah.
Actually, I'm quite impressed. The fact that they've gone with it's a 330 base airframe, isn't it?
Yeah,
this thing. And you can see the aerodynamic problems they have on these aircraft because huge amount of the fin is blanked off by this great extension in the fuselage. So the directional stability is much reduced, which is why they've had to stick those funny extra fin on the end of the tailplanes to improve the directional stability, along with some dorsal strakes I see at the bottom of the fuselage, all of which help it pointing forwards. So it's just useful when you're in an airplane, but it probably means it'll have quite a restricted crosswind limit.
It does, yeah. Well, certainly the regular Beluga ST does. I can't remember what it is, but it's not very much. And I guess it's probably quite a handful at the edge of its envelope.
Yeah, I bet. They probably have to pick their days when they fly, which means it must be quite fun being a Beluga pilot because you spend a lot of time sitting around.
Yeah, absolutely.
From what I understand, because Harden is fairly close to me, and we see the Belugas go over the house quite often, and I believe that at the moment, because of the are working their cotton socks off, because the demand is so high, and they've got to get these wings around the network, otherwise the whole thing grinds to a halt. You can't deliver an aeroplane and say, well, we'll bring the wings next week.
Yeah. I mean,
Good point.
The pic. I mean, I popped the picture up earlier. I'll pop it up again now. I mean, I don't know. It always reminds me of like a sort of like a whale, in its sort of like a dolphin with with a little poke at the bottom there. It's just. Like,
I'm wondering if that's why they called it
the Beluga.
Oh, all right. Go away, all of you.
Anyway,
Right,
so
okay.
Al, are you okay to bring up the next story, or do you want us to?
No, wait. I mean, the next story reads. Hang on.
Good old EasyJet, this one.
Give him a chance. It's not in Welsh.
Yeah, the next story reads: the web page was reloaded because a problem occurred.
Right, splendid.
Oh, right.
Okay, so anyway, this is on the Daily.
Okay, this story comes from the Express,
There we go.
and it's from the City and Busy News section, and its title is "EasyJet in fares hope for third Heathrow runway."
Ooh,
Quite exciting.
indeed.
I wonder if EasyJet think they're getting a look in at Heathrow. I doubt it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
EasyJet has claimed airfares on some of the UK and European routes will be cut by nearly a third if a new runway is built at Heathrow. The Luton-based budget airline said expansion of the London hub would lead to greater competition from more low-cost carriers. It is urging MPs to support the third runway in the forthcoming Commons vote. Chief Commercial Officer Robert Carey, wasn't he the Archbishop at some point? Anyway, said
from grace,
this
yeah.
expansion would enable low-cost airlines to provide new routes and increased competition on dozens more UK and European routes. New entrants would launch flights to the UK and European airports not currently served by Heathrow. Lower than legacy airlines, so its fares on these services would be lower than those paid by passengers today. The company already operates from other major hub airports such as Amsterdam Schiphol and Paris Charles de Gaulle. Heathrow's plan to build a third runway was given cabinet support last week, and MPs will soon vote on it. Transport Secretary Chris Grayling said the £14 billion runway could be completed by 2026.
Yeah,
I think the
could
operative
be.
word there is could.
Yeah, I know.
And would entirely be funded by private money.
There's a surprise. Yeah, okay. Do you honestly see like someone like EasyJet or Ryanair flying out of Heathrow, though? I mean,
No. In a word, no.
Okay, right. Do
What do
think
you
about
think,
it for a moment. Yeah.
Well, I think BA will put up a big fight if they do. They probably need those extra slots. There is a chance because with that extra capacity, you've got to let somebody in. But there's an awful lot of airlines currently operating that have been clamoring for slots, and to have another airline come in and start grabbing them, I think there'd be a huge furor amongst those who currently operate out of Heathrow.
Yeah.
Indeed. So let's have a plain talking UK sweepstake. When do we think the new runway, the third runway,
So what did they say? It was
Heathrow will actually open?
2026, didn't they? They actually said that it was going to happen. I'm
No,
going to put.
could be open by then. Yep.
Yeah,
So when do we actually think?
I reckon the runway will be open by 2030.
Carlos?
I am gonna go.
He's thinking. You can smell the burning from here, gents.
I'm gonna say if this is gonna be put through and it's been approved or whatever. And
you think it might be done in time?
I'm gonna go for 27.
27. You reckon just a year late?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a year late.
I mean, I suppose in some respects, because there's been so much talk about the runway. I mean, if they, God help them if they were late with it. Do you know what I mean? What would your money be on, Nick?
After I retire.
Oh,
Right. Okay. Well, that's only a couple of years away, isn't it? So?
Less than that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
actually, I reckon once they get the go-ahead, they'll pull all the stops out, and I wouldn't be surprised. Now, how long will it take to get the go-ahead? Probably a year. Yeah. So I'm going to say 2025.
You reckon it's going to be really early?
Yeah. I reckon it'll be there early.
Okay. So let's have a look at, for example, the new Berlin airport. That still hasn't opened. So what's that got to do with Heathrow? Well, not a lot, other than the fact that the new Berlin airport was subject to a huge amount of public outcry.
Right.
And I I will be surprised if this runway opens before 2030. I really am.
Okay.
You reckon there'll be a lot of Arthur Dents out there lying down in front of
it, busy making a fuss. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when was the last major runway built in the UK? That, off the top of my head, must be Manchester's second runway. Yeah.
Right.
And Swampy and his mates delayed that by at least 18 months.
Right. Okay. Yeah, well, the quick straw poll here in the chat room, actually, we've got Richard Adams reckons it's going to be 2035. Shorty Cosgrove is actually going for 2028. Pilot Pip, the legend that is, obviously saying it's the first Friday after never, apparently. He's obviously convinced it's never actually going to happen. But, yeah, it's... was it Mariana saying, Ari, the runway, if it were here in the US, it would be at least 10 years beyond the ETA and the cost twice the budget and add a zero. Yeah. To be fair, that's quite accurate.
Well, that's probably going to happen anyway. But the thing, the logic of this whole argument by EasyJet is that prices will come down. Excuse me, the airlines that are operating from Heathrow are going to have to pay this huge amount.
Absolutely.
And so actually landing fees and costs of operating in Heathrow are going to go up, not go down.
Yeah.
And a low-cost carrier like Easy can cover that cost without increasing their fares, I don't know.
Okay, call me the cynic here, but I think this is just EasyJet jumping onto the Heathrow media bandwagon and just, coming up with a story, their spin on things, because I don't see them operating out of Heathrow. I just don't see that, and I think they've just gone, okay, well, there's a load of stuff about Heathrow in the media, let's just throw our name into the hat.
Yeah, just because if it's all about Google searches and things like that, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you're looking at the runway, you see the name EasyJet, you might book a holiday. Yeah, I can see the logic behind
having said that, the express.co.uk have played a blinder, because in the middle of this online article there is the video of EasyJet flight from Paris declares emergency.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, I chose not to play that, but just call me old-fashioned.
So moving on, let's move on to the next verbally abusive story.
Okay.
So we haven't had a Jet 2 story for a while.
There's more?
Yeah.
We should have dug the model out for this. I got it upstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this is on foxnews.com. Quite why Fox News would be having a Jet 2 story.
Yeah, that's a slightly confusing thing.
So the headline is verbally abusive Jet 2 passenger playing with blow-up doll forces landing. Banned for life.
You have
airline.
Actually read this, that it's not right. Okay.
So an intoxicated passenger who forced a Jet 2 flight to make an unscheduled landing in Toulouse, France, has been banned for life from the airline. According to reports, the male passenger was on the flight from...
Show title, Hard On and Dull.
So according to reports, the male passenger who was on the flight from Belfast, Northern Ireland, to Ibiza, Spain, as part of a bachelor party. The group of men were quite rowdy, apparently, when they came on board, said the BBC. The disruptive passenger who was said to be drinking alcohol during the flight and playing with...
not a passenger drinking during flight.
And he was playing with said air-filled item,
receptacle,
was reportedly warned by the flight crew.
That's even worse.
And the pilot
Sorry.
about his behaviour. Family show.
Sorry,
Family show.
Who'd have thought I'm the one getting told off? Wow, yeah. Wow.
So apparently, as are two
receptacle.
Oh, God. So apparently, the story goes on.
I'm sorry.
Obviously, the captain.
I don't think anyone cares anymore.
Introduced himself and gave a stern warning
right.
To the passengers, and he said that only alcohol brought on board could be consumed on the flight, and duty free could not be consumed, as he told the passengers. And the passengers there were then refused alcohol by the flight attendants, who said the man became verbally abusive. Jet2 said the decision to divert the plane was because of the deplorable behaviour of a particularly disruptive customer, the BBC reported. We will not under any circumstances tolerate this type of disgraceful behaviour on board our aircraft, Phil Ward, managing director of Jet2, said in a statement, but we'll be taking further action in support of our crew to ensure the passenger is held accountable for his actions, and indeed he has already received a lifetime ban from Jet2 flights. Another passenger tweeted about the man's behaviour, saying he was playing with the thing in front of a passenger During the early morning flight, passengers on board the plane suffered a 3-hour delay because of the diversion, and passengers couldn't get off the plane as it was roasting hot on board, a passenger told the BBC. All of the kids and children on the plane were so unsettled, and 6 hours in total when it should have been a 3-hour flight. The airline commented on the incident, saying that alcohol was to blame for the man's actions, and it's very clear that consuming alcohol illicitly contributed to this behaviour, the airline said. In consultation with the captain, we've had to take the unusual decision to divert the aircraft as the situation on board escalated. And
Evening,
it was
honey.
taken.
Hi, sweaty lady.
And Gemma's just walked in.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, wife.
Yeah.
Checking on my dinner.
Gemma's just been for a run around Ersham, as you do.
Go to there and back.
Indeed. So I mean, it's yet another Jet 2 story, really. That's sort of it's the same sort of.
Do you know what I've had two people I work with, the company I work for now. They've both had flights and holidays with Jet 2 in the last couple of months, and they both said they're fantastic.
Yep.
They've both come back and said that
Lisa
the
and Lee
airline
can't fault them.
said the airline was really good. The crew and the service they provided on board was really top notch. So yeah.
They've got a pretty reasonable curry on board, I'll say that.
that's how it judges his airlines, by the quality of food that's served during the and amen to that. So absolutely.
I'm guessing.
So what's the feeling amongst you guys about bringing your own booze onto an airplane and drinking it?
Well, I think it's. I think if you want to drink alcohol on board, then I think you should at least, do the service of allowing the airline to make money from it. Frankly, if you want to drink a beverage, an alcoholic beverage on board, I don't know. It's because I suppose that those that aren't willing to pay.
Well, you're
those
a former publican, aren't you, Matt? So you take a bit of a dim view of someone bringing their own booze into your pub.
Very much.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make.
Yeah,
because you don't take your own food to a restaurant.
No, you don't.
You don't take your own booze to a pub.
No.
If the place you're going to sells food and drink, they would probably have a policy which says you don't bring your own food and drink because we're selling it. So I can understand why they did that. I don't understand why people get so upset about not being able to drink their duty free on board. Apart from the fact that, of course, the cabin crew cannot police the amount being consumed by people, and they go from being quite pleasant passengers to being intoxicated nitwits. If I was being something stronger.
If I was being brutally selfish, I would argue that perhaps I wouldn't have a problem with somebody drinking on board duty free if they bought it on board. They haven't bought it in the airport as they get on the plane. Can you see what I mean? I suppose then suddenly it's very difficult to police these things. So if you've bought, say, a bottle of gin. The
problem with that is that it comes in a sealed bag and you're supposed to have it sealed when you leave. So once you crack it, you're a bit stuck, aren't you?
Well, that is the rumour. Yeah, indeed.
So I mean, I would say no. You buy proper booze on. You don't buy duty free on, then drink it. No, but you're right. That is a slight difficulty there.
The decision to divert or to land at the nearest available airport. Obviously, the crew of the sort of first contact with passengers that are being disruptive. But I'm guessing the final decision is yours as the captain.
Yes, you're quite right. But and nowadays it's much harder because in the old days we would go back and suss out the situation, and if necessary. I remember an old venerable captain said, he says, you put your hat and your jacket on and you go down there like you mean business, and you can usually sort out most problems. It doesn't always happen, but of course, with that full uniform, air of authority, I'm the ultimate boss on the airplane. So if you guys don't sit down, shut up, something major is going to happen. It's usually sufficient. But nowadays, of course, we're locked behind that door. We can't use that influence.
No.
And we rely almost entirely on the verbal description that's coming from the crew in the back. Now, some of them are very good at coping with these situations. Others, not so.
Yeah.
Which might result in an earlier diversion than otherwise.
Indeed. Actually,
I think one of the other factors is that as sort of, the generations move on, I don't think that there's quite the same level of respect for the guy in the uniform as there may have been in times gone by. And I think that's probably born out of the police service. They'll say to you that the younger generation do not respect the police in the same way as the likes of sort of, our generation. I mean, certainly I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the police are holier than thou, and there will always be, the odd bad apple, if you like. That's just society. But I've always respected the police, but I don't think that necessarily follows through now. And that's where, we have some of the problems, because there is no respect.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Actually, Chris Turnbull in the chat room, he was actually saying, playing devil's advocate. He said, playing devil's advocate to what? Why should you not be allowed alcohol? Why should you not be allowed alcohol, but you're allowed soft drinks? I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Actually, I think who was it said? I think it was Richard Adams said about having, where is it there? Yeah, corkage.
A corkage fee.
Yeah, a corkage
pay
fee.
the airline
I think there'd be a few less people cracking open bottles.
Yeah, the difficulty that we face with all of this is, first of all, the average member of the travelling public doesn't understand that the effects of alcohol are far greater on a pressurised airliner than they would be, on the ground. So you're roughly, 1 measure of alcohol on the ground is the equivalent of 3 when you're in the air. So if you got, people who start doing, Jaeger bombs on board, you're going to have serious issues very, very quickly. Well, we already have enough problems as it is. So the control over the sale and consumption of alcohol on board, is very akin to a pub, in that you, as a landlord or someone serving alcohol, you assess that person's capability, and if they say, right, I'll have 3 more ciders, please, and you go, well, actually, I think you've had enough.
Yeah.
And that's your prerogative, as I understand it, as a landlord. You're not obliged to serve alcohol.
No, you're not.
And we're not obliged to serve alcohol on board the airline. But at least if we're serving it, we know how much has been distributed, if you like.
Person. You don't know how tanked they were when they got on board.
And the people just don't understand this concept of how much more potent alcohol is on an airliner.
Interesting, actually, in the chat room, again, Glenn Towler is saying that in New Zealand you can buy your duty-free when you land. I do think that duty-free shouldn't be sold before takeoff. I think
there's a great argument for that, because
you
don't really want to be flying around an airplane with hundreds of bottles of inflammable liquid that can fly around in an accident and obviously burst into flames. And that's been suggested many times and completely resisted by the airports, who make a lot of their profits selling to outgoing passengers.
True. Yeah.
So you have to change the whole outlook of passengers and say, look, you've got to buy at the airport when you land. And every airport has to do it, but you get one airport that won't, and then the whole system breaks down.
It would have to be coming from somewhere like the United Nations through ICAO that mandated that, because it requires everyone to sign up to
comply.
It.
Yeah, I mean, the aircraft also would be a lot more economical if you didn't have all that duty-free on board that the airlines were trying to sell, and that the passengers had already bought. Just think of all that weight. Every pint is a pound, every litre is a kilo, and add all those extra kilos, it's all that extra fuel burn. We'd love to get rid of all the duty-free.
That is true, absolutely.
But also, for me, I haven't shopped in a duty-free shop for alcohol for years, because...
You just go to the wrong places.
Well, no, possibly, but all the airports I've ever flown into, I could easily go down to the local supermarket here in the UK and buy a bottle cheaper than what they sell them in the duty-free shops.
Well, that's because you're not really buying duty-free when you're going around Europe, because when you go into the States, it usually is.
It really is duty-free, absolutely.
Difference.
No, that is true.
Yeah. So, Matt, do you want to get the next story?
The next story is on The Guardian again, and the headline is Rolls-Royce to cut 3,000 jobs in the UK. Now, I heard this story during the week, very sad. And it says Rolls-Royce has announced that it's to cut 4,600 jobs as part of a major shake-up of its business, mainly affecting managerial and administrative roles in the UK. Warren East, the aircraft engine maker's chief executive, said the UK would bear the brunt with around 3,000 of the job losses, and that he would not rule out compulsory redundancies. It's a horrible decision, never easy, he said, but the costs that the he said, but that the cuts were necessary if we want to be around for the next 100 years. The job losses will fall heavily on Derby, which is the group's biggest manufacturing base in the UK, which currently has a workforce of 15,700 people. The firm's HR, finance and legal departments are also based in Derby. Some corporate and support jobs in Bristol, its second biggest base in the UK, will also go. So while most of the cuts will be in the middle management jobs, engineers working on early stage design will also be laid off as they are not needed at present. The group said. Rolls-Royce said that it will still be hiring engineers in electrification and digitalisation. Approximately 1,500 of the jobs will be axed by the end of the year. It is the company's biggest round of redundancies since 2001. It's really sad. So Rolls-Royce said that the move would simplify the business into 3 customer-focused units with smaller corporate and support functions and reduce management layers and complexity, including within engineering. At the same time, it is ramping up production and hopes to be making 600 engines for wide-body aircraft by year 2020, twice as many as 5 years ago. The company employs 55,000 people worldwide. It has a workforce of 26,000 in the UK, which includes contractors. Britain's biggest union, Unite, warned Rolls-Royce against cutting too deep and too fast. Its Assistant General Secretary for Aerospace, Steve Turner, said this announcement will be deeply unsettling for Rolls-Royce workers and their families and would have a dire economic impact on local communities reliant on Rolls-Royce jobs. East, who took to the helm 3 years ago, expressed frustration at the pace of change at the business and said, we must create a commercial organisation that is as world-leading as our technologies. We need to modernise the way in which we do business. I won't continue to read the story because it's sort of going over itself. But I must say one thing that concerned me actually when this story, because again this has been on local news, and they were saying actually I didn't realise, but basically every engine that they sell, they lose like £1 million on every single engine or something stupid that they sell because they make their money on the supporting of that engine, and doing that. I mean,
they've had this huge problem with the Trent 1000 with the Dreamliner. Yeah. As you know, I saw myself on the visit to Heathrow a few weeks back, and seeing all the various Virgin aircraft, the Dreamliners, all sitting with no engines, underneath. So it's not been a good time for Rolls-Royce.
No, it hasn't. And gents, it's unfortunately time for me to leave the party. The taxi has arrived.
Okay, no, fair point. Thank you ever so much.
Yes, thanks for joining us, Al.
And
it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry it's a short visitation for me, and you can carry on to debate the merits of the financial setup.
Perhaps you can create some mayhem next week.
Frankly, it's never made any sense to me.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us, Al, as always, and we'll catch up with you very soon.
Al.
Take care, mate.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Bye.
Ciao for now, as they say in Romania.
So, Nick, I mean, what are your thoughts really in regard to these engines? I mean, it's quite sad in lots of ways that any job cuts are occurring.
This is a classic cost saving, and it's being done. It's desperate measures. The workforce. Cutting your costs, cutting your overheads, if there's nothing else you can cut to save money, is an easy target. And it disappoints me enormously when management do this, because they built up a balanced workforce over the years, and just chopping these guys, some of whom will be extremely well trained and capable, means they're going to face even bigger problems in the future when they try to build back up. You just can't get rid of all that number of people who are doing a good job and working hard so quickly, and then not be really desperate in the future when you need to get these people back. So it's a real short-term desperate measure. It does indicate to me that Rolls-Royce are having big problems at the moment, which is incredibly sad, but of course brought about by the design problems they're having with their engines, some of their engines. I've seen airlines do it when they're trying to increase their profits, and they shot people out, and the airline operates so poorly afterwards because all of a sudden you find that you can't take away half the operations staff, half the management staff without things falling through the cracks, and then you discover that
actually we did need that person.
Mistakes, they build up over a time, and you think, well, actually, we could have had 10 people, left them on, let them carry on and pay them for the cost of this mistake that was just made, and that is an absolute classic. So I think it's a bit of short-term management desperation that it sees these kind of cuts.
It is a shame. It's a big manufacturer, not going back quite a few years. What I've said before, the RB211 engine, that Rolls had trouble with when they first, built and produced that engine. But now it still is, I think, one of the sort of best power plants around. Would you agree?
Certainly the most famous.
Well, to tell the truth, a power plant's a power plant, an engine's an engine. You move the throttles up, it goes. And that's all you really care about. The airlines are interested in the bottom line. They want to know what fuel savings against weight, against maintenance costs that an engine is going to produce. And they're the ones that do all the balancing from a pilot's perspective. Whilst you might go, oh, it's great to fly a British engine. Quite honestly, I've flown engines from all sorts.
Yeah.
And so long as they damn work, I don't care who builds them.
So,
I have a place in my heart for Rolls-Royce because they've been around a long time and they have built some fantastic engines and they have a superb reputation. But it doesn't take much for that reputation to be as eroded as their
currently experiencing
compressor blades are in the Trent engines that are on the Dreamliner.
I remember Carlos saying when he came back from his visit to Heathrow when you went with your dad, didn't you? And that was one of your striking memories was literally all of these massive air carriers, with engines missing.
Yes, two of the biggest carriers in the UK, British Airways and Virgin, just with aircraft just sitting there with engines not on them.
Well, that's exactly right, and of course that rolls on because the airline can never recover all its costs, and certainly in the short term, those airlines that have aircraft sitting around are losing money hand over fist.
Yeah, and because when we were covering the story, actually, when we were asking the question, I mean, presumably at the end of the day, the buck will stop with Rolls-Royce, isn't it? This engine issue and the blades, as you're saying, is going to cost them money.
Yeah, that's something a burden they will have to carry.
Yeah.
And of course, the last thing anyone wants is for the company to go down the tubes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not only do you then suddenly have a bunch of airlines without any power plants, all that money that you're expecting to be compensated for won't now arrive because the engine manufacturer is bankrupt.
Yeah.
And it just turns into a nightmare, which could bring down airlines.
Which is definitely not the way forward.
So from one engine woe to another one, the next story is on the arabnews.com website, and the headline is Airbus Pratt & Whitney CFM on track with recovery plan for A320 engines. Now, this comes out of Hamburg. Engine makers Pratt & Whitney and CFM are on track with a recovery plan after delays left Airbus having to park dozens of aircraft without engines, an executive at the European playmaker said on Thursday. They've agreed on a plan with both of them to catch up with the production, and both are now hitting their targets, and they're on track, which is good news. Klaus Rowe, head of A320 Jet Family Program, told reporters in Hamburg. So the delays in getting engines from United Technologies unit Pratt & Whitney and CMF International, co-owned by Safran and General Electric, have left Airbus lagging behind the pace it needs to reach its full-year delivery goal. With jets left parked at its production sites while they wait for engines, Rowe said Airbus would have reduced production had it not known the extent of the problems. Did we intend to build so many airframes to park them? For sure not, said Rowe. If we had known the size of the technical and industrial problems, we might have slowed production down. He said Airbus would not be parking aircraft by the end of the year, but would still be in arrears in terms of deliveries. So it's safe to say, with all these new power plants that are kind of appearing quite frequently or in the last few years, would it be a case, would you say, of technology leaping a little bit too far ahead, in respect to these new engines? I don't know.
I can't help but think maybe the testing isn't being done properly.
Well, I think the testing's probably being done. I think it's I don't know. It just seems so funny that we all for years and years we've never had any kind of issues with.
But is it because this is the first time that they're moving away from?
Ahead,
yeah. Is it? I mean, it's that. I suppose when you're making minor tweaks to an already, hard and fast, well tested product, it's like if you essentially attempt to reinvent the wheel, is that what then starts causing you problems when it comes to stuff like this?
The 340 engines on the aircraft you fly, Nick, are they? I think they're aero engines.
We've got Rolls-Royce Trents.
Oh, they're Trents, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 500s. But the Airbus A340-300s that we initially had, they had CFM 56s on. And I think the situation is that in the old days, we were building bigger and bigger airplanes, and the engine manufacturers were just striving for power. They were trying to get more and more power out of these massive engines to build what appeared to be an ever-growing airliner size. Now the focus is in a different area. We're looking for efficiency gains. So where they were just looking for raw power, now they're looking to trim their engines down so that they produce much improved fuel efficiency and a reduction in weight. So they're trimming everything back to to pare everything down and make it as light and as efficient as possible. This is a different direction, and it's complicated. And whilst they go for these incredibly exotic materials, these fantastic looking blades, it is a slightly different technology. And airliner engines would normally last 10, 15, 20 years. I don't think they've really thought quite far enough ahead. Now, their engine monitoring systems are brilliant, so that I don't think there's ever going to be any danger, because they can see an engine that's having a problem and they will pull it off the wing well before it gets to a situation where it becomes a flight safety hazard. But what it does mean is that whilst they're trying to build more and more engines, they're also getting more being returned to them for various problems, and some of them turn out to be quite large design problems which can't be just solved by putting a new disc of blades on or replacing a few blades or whatever. They're actually having to go in some cases back to the drawing board, which is really expensive, and when you think of the unit cost of these engines, it's a major problem for them.
Yeah, agreed. It is a tricky one. Who's doing the next story then, Carl?
The next story's for you, Matt, and this next story for Matt is a bit of a I'm going to say a bit of a snappy story.
Right. Okay. And Nick's going to have a go next, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So anyway, this is on the CBS website, and the headline is "Alligator moseying across Orlando Airport tarmac halts plane trying to taxi to gate." So as you do. So why did the gator cross the tarmac to get to the pond on the other side? An alligator on the tarmac at Orlando International Airport on Monday briefly delayed a Spirit Airlines flight trying to taxi to its gate. Passengers on the plane were shocked to look out of their window and see the gator moseying across the taxiway, Airlive and Aviation News website reports. Passenger Anthony Verlandi said that the plane had just landed from Washington, D.C. when he spotted the reptile on the taxiway. He immediately took out his phone and began filming. The slow-moving gator walked across the asphalt to a small pond. Only in Florida, he wrote. The sauntering gator had been viewed over 23,000 times on Facebook and amused some of Verlandi's fellow passengers on the plane. It took about 5 minutes for the gator to get safely out of the way, and the plane had to wait. So there's not really a lot more I can add to that story. There is apparently a fascinating video if I can get it to play. So it's we'll see if we can get it to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
You hear stories about aircraft unfortunately hitting cattle or larger animals on runways and stuff. But I just thought,
there he is moseying across the tarmac.
Alligator, just having a little trot there.
Just having a little stroll across the tarmac, as you do.
Not really bothered.
No, not fussed at all.
Anything at all.
Slowest news day, was it this week, Carlos?
Ever been halted, Nick, by a reptile?
Wildlife?
Not that I can recall. Plenty of other things, but not an alligator, not yet anyway.
Well, indeed. There
I
we
just
are.
love the way he's just walking across there. So
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah, he's in no hurry, is he?
He's in no hurry, no. So next story then, Captain Nick on BBC News for you.
Of course, you've given me this. I know why, and I'm actually drinking water tonight.
Oh.
And I've noticed Captain Al was too. So this is BA Gatwick Airport. Doubles vodka's pilot jailed.
Oh.
That doesn't really flow, that headline, does it? But there you go. A British Airways pilot who turned up for work after drinking 3 double vodkas has been jailed.
Wow.
And I have to say, from my point of view, quite right.
Agreed, yeah.
Julian Monaghan boarded a plane to Mauritius at Gatwick Airport and was led away in handcuffs after colleagues smelled alcohol and called the police. He had 86 milligrams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood. In his system in January, the legal limit for pilots is 20. And in some countries, I might point out, it's 0, and you have to obey the law of the country you're in, not the country where you think you live or fly from. So, you go to Australia, for example, and you're breath tested there, you better have 0, or you're going to be in trouble. So Monaghan, 49-year-old, he wasn't even at the end of his career, admitted being over the prescribed limit and was jailed for 8 months, which I think is reasonably lean, at Lewis Crown Court. During sentences, Judge Janet Woodcott told him, who had resigned from his British Airways job, "You took a risk and it didn't pay off because you were caught." Okay. Yeah. Earth-shattering statement. You're in charge of a huge aircraft. The safety, if not the lives, indeed, of the passengers and crew members are in the hands of the pilot. Very true. They're entitled to feel they're safe. They are safe. Yes, I agree. On arrest, Monaghan from South Africa told police he drank a glass of wine on his overnight flight as a passenger from Cape Town to Heathrow. He said he consumed a measure of vodka with Diet Pepsi in his hotel room on an empty stomach and barely slept for his due on board the flight to Mauritius. Well, he must have been pretty fatigued, having done an overnight flight and then not slept all day. So he shouldn't really have been pitching up for work anyway. He should have called in fatigued.
Yeah.
If he had, he wouldn't have had this problem. The court heard Monaghan had since remembered drinking 3 miniature bottles of vodka. That's quite a lot. He insisted he obeyed the company's 8-hour bottle of throttle. Well, actually, most sensible airlines have a 24-hour rule, and for some it's like 24 hours, and that's moderate drinking, 12 hours no drinking at all. It depends on the airline, but that also depends on the person's physiology. That is just a guideline. It does not ensure that you are, of course, alcohol-free.
I mean, I know it's slightly different, obviously, but when I've been bus driving and stuff, even now, like if for example, maybe I'm being overly cautious, but I will have something to drink on Saturday, but I will literally not drink a thing all day Sunday if I'm driving Monday morning. Do you know what I mean? It's just not worth the risk.
Well, that's exactly right. And the limits for you as a bus driver are more relaxed than it would be for an airline pilot. So, I applaud you for that. So, anyway, he had initially queried the results of the test, but resigned 2 months after his arrest when further tests confirmed the samples were accurate. Do you remember the 2 pilots that were caught in Glasgow? And it turns out that their personal samples of blood had been accidentally destroyed in their overnight stay in a jail. Well, that's what you're entitled to do. You're entitled to have the police do one test, and you're allowed to take a sample and have it tested separately, and they weren't given that opportunity, so they had the case against them dropped. I'll say nothing more about that because obviously there was no evidence placed against them.
Not good.
Exactly right. The prosecutor said the amount reading taken at 22:30 remains so high that he must have drawn a significant quantity just before the 8-hour limit. Some 300 people were on the 12-hour flight, which had been scheduled to leave at 2020. The Boeing 777 was left waiting at the gate while staff looked for another pilot. Eventually took off just before 11 o'clock. Monaghan would not have taken up the role of pilot until 3.5 hours into the flight. I think that's a pretty weak excuse. When you pitch up in uniform, you should be available for duty, regardless of when you're actually going to be at the controls. So I think that's no excuse whatsoever. They also said his childhood dreams was to be a pilot. He'd been extremely stupid and bitterly regretted your actions, but it's not like we're all beginners in this world of aviation, and we all know what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. I think that's he is feeling pretty stupid and bitterly regrets it, but that is no defence whatsoever.
No, I completely agree with you. And of course, this is the thing: is he does know what he does for a living, so he's got no excuse as to that. There is genuinely no excuse for what he did. I think. I mean, I take a very militant view about it all. If I'm honest,
the story says, Nick, he says that he'll never fly as a commercial pilot again. I mean, is this a case of his commercial licence will be taken away and not ever given back?
No, I don't think that's probably the case. I think he would probably be able to regain his license if he, did sufficient. What am I thinking of? He proved that he was a reformed character and he wasn't like to make this mistake again. Because I think we're all probably entitled to serve our time, have our punishment, and then go, right, well, I'm a reformed person now. I'm not ever going to do that again. And if people trust you in that regard, then I don't think you should, it's not like he shouldn't be allowed to go and get any job again, because most jobs require you to be sober when you're at work. For being an airline pilot,
well, it doesn't matter what the job is. Yeah. It literally doesn't matter what the job is. I mean, even if you, but perhaps being a landlord is one of the few occasions where you can sort of have a drink with your regulars. But I can't think of any other situation where consuming alcohol at work is in any way acceptable.
Exactly right. And there are a lot of jobs where you hold people's lives in your hands, whether it be in a nuclear power station, driving a passenger cruise ship, or what,
anything. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It really doesn't matter.
So the British Airways said the behaviour was completely unacceptable and not what we expect from our highly professional fleet of pilots. And then they came out with something I've never heard an airline say before. Right. The safety and security of our customers and colleagues is always our top priority.
Okay.
Ding.
Ding. Talk about the standard. We're always going to say this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll say it anyway. Just
we're going to say it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't need to. Yeah.
Oh, well. There we go. Silly bugger. Anyway,
indeed,
moving on to the next story.
And, don't sit on the fence, Carlos.
No. Before I read the next story, I'm just going to say a quick hello to Lewis, a new listener of the show who's watching the live show. So hello to you, Lewis. Hope you're enjoying the show. The next story is on the newsbiscuit.com.
I beg your pardon?
Newsbiscuit.com.
Right, okay. Do we go there for our aviation news regularly?
Oh, custard creams. Anyway, EasyJet to introduce pre-cancelled flights.
I'm sorry, what? Is this a joke site? Have you looked at this?
EasyJet to introduce pre-cancelled flights. In a bold move to reduce the amount of time that passengers spend waiting for flights that never take off, EasyJet had to introduce the pre-cancelled flight. Hours of frustrating and pointless waiting will be eliminated and delays could be made a thing of the past. Flights will be booked as normal with the added choice of pre-cancellation for a small fee, said an EasyJet spokesperson. For a small fee, customers will no longer need to wait around in the airport, living off overpriced takeaway food and choking on their own sense of injustice. Instead, they can experience the disappointment of cancelled flights. Expect that the type of customers that this will appeal to will be people who didn't want to go anyway. Business people wanting to pull a sickie, or old blokes that are bored with ranting about people parking outside their house and in need of a new outlet for their bile. Okay. As part of the pre-cancellation service, EasyJet will provide an automated telephone line where people can phone and rant about how they will never use EasyJet again and will book with British Airways next time.
Right, yes, because they never cancel flights, of course. Yeah, no, right.
The website will provide a picture of a member of EasyJet staff with an expression of their face that screams, whatever. We know you'll come back because you are cheap to support the call service.
So I assume this is a site along the lines of like The Onion and like the Suffolk Gazette and things like that.
Well, this is on a few of the other news streams as well. These pre-can. I think it's just kind of.
I think it's a
way
joke.
of...
That's what it is.
No,
it's a humour. It's not real, Carlos.
It is real.
It's not
real.
real.
It is real.
I love it. I'm looking for that emoji with the expression on the face that screams, whatever you know will, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. I don't think I know which emoji that is, and I want one.
No, absolutely. I think we should have one for all of our phones. Yeah.
I like to hope that any flight I book actually goes and leaves and doesn't get cancelled. And if it does get cancelled, I want an upgrade to first class.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Or an overwing
of course, yeah, absolutely.
Where is the first class on Easy?
I think it's in the luggage hold, isn't it? Yeah.
First class seat on any EasyJet or Ryanair flight is the flight deck seats.
Right, okay.
As with any aircraft, I think, of any description.
Yeah, okay. See, Nick is actually lost for words. There's a first.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out how you make that seat turn into a bed.
Don't you guys put your feet up on the dashboard when you're flying?
Certainly not.
Okay.
We put them on the footrest.
I thought that's what that table was in front of you on the Airbus.
That's where you put your beverages.
You don't put your feet in the table, do you? God, I'm not going to eat in your house again.
I cannot imagine that Gemma would ever allow you to put your feet on any table in this building.
Exactly.
What say you, Gemma?
Absolutely.
Gemma has standards.
Yes, indeed. No is the short answer. Absolutely not. Not in any way, shape or form.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay, right.
So,
Nick could apparently. Nick, you would have specialty, but he wouldn't. You see, because he's a gentleman. He wouldn't do that.
Yeah, at least take my shoes and socks off.
Well, he says he'd at least take his shoes and socks off, of course. That's very respectful. Absolutely. Anyway, moving on before somebody gets in trouble, probably me.
Yeah.
It's Flight Global, so we're actually going to a real news story this time.
There's actually a picture for this.
Oh, is that right?
You can bung up after you've...
Right, okay. So this is Flight Global, and the headline is Lufthansa assessing damage to A340 after tug fire. Oh, yes. This is this was not good. I saw this in the news. So Lufthansa is still assessing the damage to the Airbus A340-300 caught up in a ground tractor fire at Frankfurt Main Airport. The aircraft suffered smoke contamination of its forward fuselage, but images from the scene also indicate that the nose skin was breached during the blaze, with the strong possibility that smoke entered the cockpit and cabin. There is no confirmation on the damage itself, says Lufthansa. There's currently an assessment of the situation, and it will take some days. German Air Accident Investigation Authority, BFU, is not probing the accident because the aircraft was not engaged in any air transport operation at the time. Lufthansa confirms, however, that the tow tractor involved was a diesel-powered vehicle and not one of the new electric e-tug tractors put into operation at Frankfurt. So the ground handling firm Lufthansa Leos, a subsidiary of Lufthansa Technik, recently put a second e-tug into service at the hub. The vehicle, developed by Sweden's Kalmar Motor and fitted with lithium-ion batteries, is able to tow long-haul types, including the Airbus A380 and Boeing 747, and is designed to cut emissions by 75% compared with a conventional tractor. Leos began using the vehicle at Frankfurt in 2016 and moved back and provided feedback to improve the tractor before taking on the second.
So there's a picture that was that Matt has got. I'll pop up in a second. I'm guessing you obviously saw this story, Nick. One of your much-loved aircraft with a slight issue to the flight deck floor. I think.
Yeah, we were surprised. You thought it was a funny place to have a barbecue, but
right. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
It was a bit of a sad end. I suspect that airplane will probably be too expensive to make it worthwhile repairing, which is a shame. Looks like that bit underneath the cockpit there, where is the avionics bay, and there's just so much incredibly expensive equipment down there that that will have been destroyed. I do think to myself, little chance of that one getting off again.
Sure. I mean, that's got to be a write-off, surely, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
I
would have thought so. I mean, it's obviously is fixable, but whether it's worth the cost, that's because they may well be phasing those aircraft out in preference for something like a 350.
Well, indeed, that is true. Yeah, that's a difficult one.
I bet the engineer sitting on the brakes at the time was going, What's going on?
What's going on here? Yes.
Hey guys, because the people he normally speaks to were down there on the tug, and they were probably legging it across the airfield. He was probably sitting up there going, chaps.
This aircraft, Nick, was not having passengers on board. But is there, when it's being towed, is there still someone on the flight deck, or an engineer, or someone on the flight?
There's always a brakeman. Because even most aircraft still tow with the tow bar. Obviously, some have the tow bar less ones where they actually lift up the front wheel and trap it inside a little box area. But those tow bars do break. And if they break, then the airplane is going to freewheel its way across the airfield. You need someone on the brakes there to bring it to a halt in case that tow bar breaks, or in case the tug loses power or something and they need to have an emergency stop of some kind.
Yeah. So, Nick, the last story we've left for you then on the Aviation Herald, this one.
Okay, sir. This is a Qantas A388 and another Qantas A388 over the Pacific on June the 10th. Awake turbulence causes altitude deviation. So, Qantas Airbus, the registration for those of you who are worrisomely concerned about such things is Victor Hotel, Oscar Quebec Kilo, was performing flight QF94 from LA to Melbourne and was en route. He was a flight level 310 of the Pacific about a couple of hours into the flight when he encountered turbulence, which caused his aircraft to descend for about 10 seconds before the crew recovered the aircraft and returned it to its assigned flight level. The aircraft climbed to flight level 320 shortly afterwards and continued for a safe landing without any further incident. The other aircraft was an A380-800 registration. Oh, that's the same aircraft. Wait a minute. No, it wasn't. Victor Hotel, Oscar Quebec Foxtrot. So a few letters different on the alphabet there. Was on QF12 from LA to Sydney, so a very similar routing at flight level 320, and he was obviously just 1,000 feet above Qantas 94 when they had the turbulence. So the occurrence became known by passenger reports, which means to say that the pilots did not think it significant enough to actually bother raising it in their safety report. So I suspect the Australian authorities got some reports from passengers indicating they had perceived a sudden loss of weight and were holding hands. When the aircraft nosedived for about 10 seconds, the captain announced they'd experienced wake turbulence from another A380 and were talking to ATC about to change their flight path. The current theory is that the QF94 behind got a bit of turbulence from QF12 ahead, so no big deal. The Qantas chief pilot explained that it had some wake turbulence from the leading aircraft 1,000 feet above, caused a jolt to the aircraft for a short period of time with pitch variations of up to 3 degrees. The aircraft climbed maybe 100 feet and descended back to its cruise altitude. Captain took action to avoid further exposure to the wake vortex. There were no injuries, no damage. The occurrence has been reported to the ATSB and the aircraft manufacturer, but I suspect only as a result of the fact that they were asked what was going on. And now this is the sort of thing you do sometimes get. Those of us on the flight deck, of course, we have our instruments and we can see clearly outside. We know exactly what's going on. And when you're in an aircraft and you have no other reference than your little inner ears and your senses that tell you what they think the world is doing around you, it's incredibly easy for those to be misled. And it's something that pilots learn about and train not to rely on their inner ear. There's no pilot in the world that would really stay alive if he was flying around in cloud, according to the seat of the pants feeling, which is what this kind of inner ear and your own perception of what's going on around you gives you. So when you're sitting there and you think the airplane is going into a nosedive and it might be descending a lot, on the flight deck, they're completely untroubled because the aircraft's only moving 30, 40, 50, or in this case, perhaps 100 feet. I mean, it's an insignificant deviation. It might feel slightly uncomfortable if the airplane is jolted hard, but the actual physical movement of the airplane is very slight, and the danger is negligible. So this is just, I'm sorry to say, a classic of people in the back of the airplane, and I think one of them, from a report I read in another paper, was actually a news reporter making something out of absolutely nothing.
So, Nick, there's a couple of questions from one of the listeners, which is on the show notes, if you've got that in front of you.
I'll just pull them up.
While he's just doing that, actually, it's just worth mentioning. Actually, while Nick's just doing that, we've had I've had a message sent to me via David. David was in the chat room. David Corson was in the chat room earlier, and he just said, "Hi, I hope I might be the first person to be watching the live show whilst flying. Although I couldn't actually listen, I'll be catching up though. Have a great show." The guys are saying. He did say also that actually he wasn't in charge at the time when he wasn't watching the show, but he's just sent me a couple of pictures, which are just really nice. So
excellent.
These
Good
are
job.
actually literally beamed to us in the last couple of minutes. So yeah, nice one,
awesome.
David. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
that.
David.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, sorry, Nick. Yes, do see what the listeners have.
Yeah, I found it now, and it's some questions from Andy from the UK, who says or asks, how does wake turbulence just after takeoff differ, if at all, from the wake turbulence at flight levels? Well, it's basically caused by the same thing. It's the wingtip vortices, but not just the wingtip vortices. You get vortices from various parts of the aircraft. The wingtip vortices, and when you're configured with your flaps down, the flap vortices from the edges of the flaps can also be quite large. It's the air that is above the wing trying to get below the wing. You know, there's the other way around. Below the wing, trying to get above the wing. You know, there's lower pressure on top of the wing, and there's a slightly higher pressure under the wing. Now, air will always try to go from high pressure to low pressure. So the air under the wing is always trying to escape around the wingtip and get to the top of the wing. And in doing so, it creates a circular vortex which emanates from the wingtip and trails back behind, and it forms a cone-like vortex. And they sit there when you're in the cruise. You know, they're a significant vortex. They're a significant vortex on the ground. They behave slightly differently in the takeoff and landing scenario because obviously they interact with the ground. In the air, there's not much to move them because unless there's a strong jet stream blowing, that might slightly drift them and the aircraft. So on the ground, they tend to move along the ground, and they can move into the path of a landing aircraft, and that could be quite difficult. So you have to keep an eye on the crosswind that's going to hold these vortices in position or clear them away out of the way. But that's why there is a significant timing restriction, particularly if you're a lighter aircraft following a heavier aircraft, because obviously the bigger the aircraft, the more lift it needs and the larger the vortex. So the air traffic controllers normally look after that, give you a distance or a time separation, and it also depends upon whether you've got airborne from an adjacent runway, the same runway, whether it's a crossing runway, what the angle is. It all gets quite complicated, and air traffickers are pretty good about working all that stuff out. Once you're airborne, it's the same vortex that you're trying to avoid, but now it's a lot easier, and often it's quite visible because you can normally see the chemtrails coming out of the back of the engines where we've got the chemtrails turned on. And so that gives you an indication of where the turbulence from the wingtips will be because you've got a physical line. But even if not, if you're sitting dead astern an aircraft and he's very close to your altitude, there is a chance that you're going to pick up a vortex. Now, the rule book says, or the generally agreed theory is that the vortex from a wing starts to drift down quite quickly, within a few miles, and will usually stabilize or dissipate about 500 feet below the aircraft ahead. So if you're 1,000 feet below, you're usually fine and safe. However, and by 20 miles behind, they're completely gone, usually. However, since we now fly within 1,000 feet of each other, that's not a huge separation, only a few hundred feet. It's quite sensible to offset. So we call that a strategic offset, and in certain areas it's formalized. In other areas, air traffic insist upon it, like in China, for example, they will often insist upon a strategic offset. Or you can just choose to do it. Sometimes you have to ask air traffic's permission, sometimes you don't. And all you do is you displace your track a mile or perhaps 2 miles offset from the guy ahead of you, so that there's no chance that turbulence will drift down onto you. We're usually not concerned about it if we're a heavy aircraft following another heavy aircraft. I personally prefer to not spill any champagne, so I will make sure that
quite right.
I'm displaced if I think there's going to be a problem. But if I was a lighter aircraft, like Pilot Pip's little mosquito he flies around in, what is it now? The Lemon, that's it. Then I would make sure I was like miles away. But if I was flying another big airplane, then I wouldn't be quite concerned, because they could obviously handle it easier. And all you do is you just put your aircraft slightly to one side and type it in the computer, I want to offset 1 mile right, or whatever you've decided is a safe limit. Even if you do encounter this turbulence, if you're a big airplane following a big airplane, it's just a little uncomfortable. You just get bounced around a little bit. It's not a significant problem. Obviously, for a EasyJet behind a 380 or encountering a 380 turbulence, it can be a pretty severe event. Hence that aircraft over in the Middle East there that got turned upside down a few times and pretty badly damaged. They had to divert, and I don't think the airplane's going to fly again. So that's have I done the questions? After takeoff, does it differ from the flight levels? Not really. It's the same source. There's slightly less when you're at altitude because you don't have any flat vortices coming away. How much separation should there be between commercial aircraft when at cruise height? Well, none if you're at different altitudes. Okay, because that's the whole point. You're flying at a different altitude, you're clear to do your own thing. But as I said, any sensible chap who's trailing another large aircraft and sitting right behind it in that sort of 5 mile to 20 mile regime, I would be tempted to move. And if I've got a big aircraft crossing ahead of me at the same altitude, then I will be aware, and I might just flick the belts on, put the seatbelt signs on, just until I'm sure that we're going to be clear of any residual. If you're at the same altitude and the aircraft's crossed ahead, his weight should drop down below you, because it is going to drift down to about 500 feet below his previous altitude. So you should, in theory, miss it, but always better to be safe and make sure everyone's strapped in just in case.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nick.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Always a list.
That's very good. That's answered the question. I hope that's
hope Andy will be
answered
happy
everything
with
for
that,
Andy.
yeah.
So that is where we bring the commercial news segment to a close. So coming up next, it is the little piece that we were going to play last week, but we ran out of time. And those of you who follow the show might know that a certain young host sitting opposite the table to me here had a little jolly not so long back over to Italy.
Young host?
I know, he was younger than me by about a month or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had a little jolly over to Italy with Owen.
Yes,
and,
who is very young.
Who is very young.
Yeah.
And also Owen and Matt met up with Jenny Parkinson over in Rome. They also met Grant McCarran,
the legend that is.
That most of you will know, who is from the Plane Crazy Down Under podcast.
Yeah.
So, Matt, if you wouldn't mind just playing that out for us.
Indeed, here we
now.
go. So regular listeners to the show will know that I've taken a little trip to Rome, and it means that while we're here, I've literally been able to meet like a living legend. I'll be honest, he's got a funny colour now, and I'm sitting here in a beautiful taverna. Is that the correct little cafe?
Ristorante, cafe, sito, ojo.
Very nice.
And lovely. Oh, thank you very much. Ooh.
Oh, wacko.
Oh, I say.
Nibbles to have with your beer.
We have nibbles. I'll include some photos. So we're in a little cafe basically,
cafe.
And it is now 10 o'clock in the evening on our
Local
first day
time.
here, local time. And as I say, the local legend I'm sat with is none other than Sir Grant of McCarran.
Yeah, well, hi guys. Yeah, it's me, and I've had one extra day to try and acclimatise to the local time zone. But the thing that's helping me is alcohol, and we have another plate of that just about to arrive.
Oh, fabulous! And I've got a cocktail. I've decided that I'm going to throw caution into the wind, and thank you very much.
Grazie.
Cheers. Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. Grazie.
It looks like sort of
Grazie.
like Fanta. It's brilliant.
It's an Aperol Spritz, dude. You'll love it.
Wow, we've got nibbles and
Ooh,
everything. This
corn
is
chips.
amazing. Fantastic. Yeah. So, what on earth are you doing in Rome, Grant?
I'm here with work.
Right.
There is a user forum for the principal vendor of software that we use on the system that I manage back home in Australia for my day job. They're having their annual user forum meeting. It's called AeroSig, as in Special Interest Group, AeroSig. And so I've coughed up a bit out of my budget and got a whole lot of approvals from some senior types to allow two of us to come over. And so, our production manager and I have come over to attend the forum. We got in yesterday morning at stupid o'clock after travelling for, let's just say...
a stupid amount of time.
Yeah, well, as I got on the flight to go from Singapore to Rome, after having travelled to Singapore, I'd been up for 26 hours.
Wow.
So then I finally got some sleep, and fortunately I'm going business class, so...
Could be worse.
Yes. Yes, I could be in a 9 abreast economy in a 787, but we won't go there.
No, indeed. Now, the time frame that he's talking about there, I thought was going to be a winner, but actually, the other person who's here in Rome with me is our favourite Harpjet member of staff, and that is Owen. And now, you've actually managed to do, I think it was about 32 hours, I think, when we finally met up with Grant. But I mean, you've been awake since what time now?
Oh, 8 o'clock yesterday.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
which would have been. Sunday, wouldn't it? 8 o'clock Sunday
8 o'clock
morning.
Sunday,
Yeah, absolutely. And we're now in Monday. And I'm rather surprised you're still awake, actually, it has to be said. I mean, a couple of power naps have been had
power
during
nap
the
on
day.
the plane.
And
a power nap in a cafe after the Colosseum. Well, that was
20-minute naps are the way forward.
Right.
They really are.
They can fool you into thinking you're coherent. No problem at all.
Everything's all hunky-dory.
But
fine.
as we discovered during our discussion with a bunch of the people I work with and the people that are going to be at the user forum, a few of us got together for dinner just before, and we discovered Owen might not be as coherent as he thought.
No. Owen, if you'd like to share with what is this dry rain that you're referring to? Is it an Irish term?
It's an Irish term. Dry rain and wet rain. You got different types of rain. It's like different types of snow for Eskimos.
Yeah, I'm sorry I mentioned that earlier, but it's locked onto that. That's the new future for
Indeed. It's fair to say that our trip here hasn't gone that smoothly. Entirely my fault, because I got accosted by a street vendor, which was a bit
you
silly.
had sucker gullible written all over it. You did fall for a few things.
I did,
Despite
absolutely.
me going, hey, we've got to get to the Colosseum. Come on, Matt, we've got to go.
Get going,
And Owen and I both going, no, as you pulled your wallet out.
Yes, I know. All right, it's the joys of being the naive British tourist, isn't it? But
we need to get you more worldly wise.
I need some more worldly wise. So I'm sure between the pair of you, I will be very educated before we get home.
Yeah, some of it you may even be allowed to tell Mum. But
none of it I will be able to tell Mum. But so we've been to see the Colosseum today. That was amazing. We did a guided tour. Really nice, some great photos. And
wow, more food. There's no table to put it on. This is awesome.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm suddenly very frightened about how much this is going to cost us all.
No, because what's happening is the place is closing for the night, and all this food would go to the dogs. But otherwise, if they figured, these tourists will eat it,
so they're going to feed us the dogs, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I can deal with that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this happened to us at a place yesterday as we were drinking and just trying to stay awake long enough for the jet lag to
kick in.
Acclimatise. It was, we were hoping to get to 8 o'clock. We got to 9. And the guys were just bringing food out all the time, and they didn't charge us for any of it. This was a different location. And I suddenly realised why when they started packing up all the seats around us. And I was like, you were going to Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness me! I cannot believe how much food has just been brought out in front of us. We're gonna have, absolutely, I think we need to stretch over into another table here. But that's fantastic. So we went to the Colosseum today. Actually, I should just say that our day here in Rome started by being we jumped on the bus that Jenny had told us to, and then we got to meet up with Jenny actually, who came and literally walked us onto the metro and
that was a lot of fun.
Brought us to meet up with Grant, and that we had a nice coffee and some appetizers and nibbles and things at the thing.
Became lunch.
So basically, yes, it accidentally became lunch because we had a 45-minute walk from where we were to the Colosseum.
Yeah, I've dragged Matt and Owen all around Rome. I mean, it wasn't helped by the fact that I spent about 5 hours waiting for my hotel room to be available. James and I both got in. Our hotel rooms weren't available to 3. We're there at the hotel before 10.
Wow.
And Bill from the vendor, the Australian arm of the vendor, his hotel room was ready at a different hotel. So I went threw a pair of shorts on because I knew it was going to be 30 degrees and there's no way in heck I was walking around in jeans.
No.
So yeah, and then we just went walkabout and we walked all around the place and saw a whole lot of fascinating sights. The Parthenon was incredible and all that kind of stuff. And clocked up about 1,300 steps and thought, wow, that's pretty good. And oh my God, there's more.
Really? Oh my God!
Just in case we weren't looking fat enough.
Absolutely. I know. We've got plenty of room.
Awesome.
You see, this is what it is.
Awesome.
I like this.
There's more food than table now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyhow,
just to let the listeners know, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plates of food, none of which we've ordered, all of which is looking quite gourmet.
And if you're watching on the YouTube stream, I will obviously pop a picture up of our feast that is currently in front of us. So so today for us was a wander around the Colosseum, obviously, and then it's been so lovely, Grant, to finally meet you in person and just chat. And we've had a lovely meal, and your colleagues have just been so kind to us.
We had a really good chat with there was a couple of folks from the aviation, like the air navigation service provider out of Australia. There was my co-worker and myself, and there was 2 of the guys from the Australian arm of the vendor, and you guys. And it was a really
lot
good
of fun.
It was hilarious fun, especially as now the ANSP in Australia is possibly going to add a new entry to their METARs of DRA for dry rain.
Dry rain, absolutely, which Owen has introduced into the world. So, as I say, I feel that as the Plain Talking UK podcast is providing a service to the world, if you like, in introducing these people to things that they've never heard of before.
Yeah, and I think they should actually have plus DRA for very dry rain.
Very dry rain. Okay, that's the one.
That's called no rain at all.
No rain at all. That's the one that you don't need a coat for.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to. So we're meeting up with you've obviously got Grant's got to go and do what he's actually here to do.
Yeah, that starts
for
tomorrow.
the next few days. So this is the only chance we get to sort of meet up with him. But it's just been really nice. We're meeting up with Jenny tomorrow, aren't we? And we're doing
lunch,
other bits. So we're meeting Jenny for lunch, and then we're doing something else which I've forgotten. But more will be coming about.
With that ticket from today at the Colosseum, you might be able to go do the forum tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
And also the old castle, the old space up on the hill where Rome was originally founded, as the legend goes.
Wow.
That hilltop that we were looking at off the balcony, that was what she was talking about. Was that's the guided tour lady was saying that's supposedly where Romulus founded Rome. So
let's go see that.
Definitely. If you've never been to Rome, seriously, I think a message that Grant sent me really sort of, hit home really, in the fact that, basically we've come to a place with 3,000 years worth of history, great company
close.
And good beer. I mean, what more could you want? What more do you need? And Grant, as I say, it's been great to meet you, and we will catch up with you on the show again. Very soon, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt there will be a time when I'm not running all around the place and you're like, hey, we haven't got anyone, can you hop on with a microphone? Yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we're meeting up with Jenny tomorrow, and there'll be more about that later on. Woohoo! So it's now Tuesday, and we've done what was, a very short walk, frankly, to
it wasn't bad.
One of the places I wanted to see more than anything else, and if I press this button here, you can just have a quick guided tour. We're actually stood right in the middle of St. Peter's Square, and it's beautiful. I can't think of it.
It's really stunning.
There's just no other word I can think of it, really. We've got the most amazing day, sun weather-wise. I do hope it's raining in the UK, I'm not going to lie. The most amazing day here.
Matt's getting very sunburned.
I am good. Hey, excuse me. Excuse me. But it's just beautiful. I just can't put it into words almost. You know, like some places you go to where you walk, you know, you really want to go and see St Peter's Square, which is what I said like long before we set up. I said I really want to go and see St Peter's Square, and you walk. I'm sorry. I know this has got nothing to do with aviation, and I apologise in advance. But you know, it was on the bucket list. I wanted to go and stand at St Peter's Square and, you know, stare at where he stands on the balcony when he's doing his thing. And this is one of those rare moments where you walk in, and I was the exact opposite of disappointment, because quite often you get, you know, something that's on your bucket list and you walk in, it's very underwhelming. But actually, as we literally walk, really nice. As we walk through the security, because the security's really tight, isn't it, to get in and out of here?
Yeah, well, it looks to be fairly extensive.
Yeah, and it's just amazing, just amazing. So we've got some beautiful fountains on either side of us. We're now off to go and find the, what's it called?
The Trevi Fountain.
The what?
The Trevi Fountain?
The Trevi Fountain, yeah, that sounds like the one. Yeah. So once we've done that, we're going to go and try and find, what's the place called?
The Trevi Fountain?
No, not that.
The Forum?
The Forum, yeah. We're going to do the Forum.
Yeah. Maybe take a look at the Pantheon, and yeah. Have some more good wine, good food.
Ah, yes. So we're meeting the lovely Jenny in Rome, although we're... The bells.
I'm not too sure what that signifies.
No.
Past one?
Right. Yeah, fair enough, yeah. Perhaps it's lunchtime for the Pope.
Maybe.
We'll go with that. So we're meeting Jenny sort of when she finishes work, bless her, because obviously she actually lives in Rome, and we're sort of meeting some of her family, I think, tonight, which will be nice. So it's evening time now, and I'm happy to say that we've met up again with what I can only describe as the logistics manager for this particular trip, who has very kindly sorted out all our accommodation and ways to get from one part of where we landed to our meeting points, etc. So welcome, Jenny.
Oh, I thought you meant him.
No.
I don't do logistics.
No.
I do the travel plans. We're getting from here, this airport to this airport.
Yeah.
Once we get past the airports, it's not really
down to someone else. Yeah,
my forte.
Okay, well, my forward planning involved buying, I think, 2 bus tickets and finding a rather dicey-looking B&B, but I think it's turned out to be okay.
It's absolutely glorious. Seriously, you need to stick that in the old repertoire, because it's really quite nice. They're so friendly and everything. It's really nice. We'll have to sort of maybe see. Well, let's wait till we've checked out, and when we check out, if it's all still fine, then we'll tell everybody where it was, because it was quite a bargain, I think, to be said.
Well, certainly a bargain.
Yeah, considering where its location is in Rome, it's very central to where.
And it is literally central to, like I said, wonderful choice, because it is literally central to all the things that we've been doing today. So we're sitting now in. Yeah. So which square is this?
This is the Piazza della Repubblica, Republic's Piazza.
And it's fair to say, I think, that the Italians are rather fond of a fountain, and we seem to have done nothing but visit fountains today, which has just been great. And apart the punner in me is rather struggling with the name over the eatery that we're at the moment, which is the Itali, which is Eataly, which I'm struggling with. I've got to be honest.
Oh, it's great. We've had some, myself and Matt have had some really nice beer from, not quite Corsica, you were saying it was...
Genoa.
Genoa?
Yeah.
Excellent, yeah. So, actually a place I fly in quite frequently too.
Quite strong, but was it 5.2, was it? Yeah, 5.2 is the thing, and it's Germany, and it's actually, if you like things like Hogard and that kind of thing, it's a much hoppier, much stronger version. Although, listen to me talking about beer and almost sounding like I know what I'm talking about. But it's, and again, it's a sort of like a pale ale type thing. It really nice, strongly recommended. And then an espresso, obviously, for the poor lady who's driving. But there we are, all part of the fun.
That doesn't usually stop me.
Wrong answer. Okay, so we're now going to wander off to where's the museum that we?
Actually, I think we'll drop the museum and we'll go and have a look at a big church, St Mary Major.
Oh wow!
Very good.
And then we have the delight of meeting up with Jenny and her family for a bite to eat this evening, which is I'm very much looking forward to. So again, officially from Maya and Owen, thank you so much for all your help with our trip here. It's so nice, as I was saying to Grant last night. It's been so nice to actually meet have somebody who knows the area and say, right, okay, we go over here and we get just like the metro. Here's your ticket. It's just brilliant. It's just to say thank you so very much for your help.
My pleasure.
So that's it. We're back on the bus, not the buses and the trains to head back to the airport in the morning to go home. Boo.
Yeah, we have a few hours in the morning, but not too long, and then we've got the afternoon flight back to London Southend.
Yeah.
And then I start work on Thursday morning. And
yeah, me too. Yeah,
you're back to work.
Yeah, indeed. So it's been a wonderful trip, one I will never forget. We've done all the things that were on my bucket list for whilst in Rome, so I'm very satisfied with that. But Jenny, thank you for your hospitality.
Well, thank you for entertaining me.
So it's now Wednesday afternoon and we're sat back at the airport. How do I say the airport name again? Ciampino. So we're sat back at Ciampino Airport and we're awaiting our flight to head home. Owen's just checked to make sure it is running to time, which is very exciting. And that's it. Our time in Rome is done, really. Time to head home. You had a good time?
Yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed myself immensely.
Special thanks must go to Jenny and her wonderful family who we had dinner with actually last night, which was just wonderful and nice. It was called the white chicken, if you did the direct translation, where we went for, which doesn't sound fantastic, but actually it really was.
Oh, it was beautiful. Yeah. Really good meal and great company. And,
yeah, that's it. So that's the end of the diary. It's home time, Owen.
It is.
Boo. And that is the end of that.
Someone had a nice time.
I had a really nice
Didn't
time.
they?
I'm very sorry that virtually all of it had nothing to do with aviation. But I did take lots of video from the plane on the way back. So
I didn't notice that.
You'll be very proud of me, actually. I sat at a window seat on the way home.
Were you front row, middle row?
Were you able to see the wings flapping up and down and the engines all going?
Yeah. That I was not so keen on. I've got to be honest. It was really nice. I have to say, Ryanair did us proud, to be fair. And on the way back, I actually flew on one of the newer ones. Where it's with all the new cabin interior and stuff. It was really quite nice. What are you laughing at?
The one where the toilet's 24 inches wide.
I don't know what to do with that information. What are you laughing at?
I was just amused by Nick's pixelated head.
Oh, right.
I was drinking.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Actually, while we still have him in the chair,
I'm a responsible pilot, so you can't identify me when I'm drinking.
Right. Oh, good Lord. Right, okay. While we have him in the chat room very, very briefly, I must just say, congratulations. Sir Neville of Bounds is actually in the chat room at the moment. And we must just say, muchos congratulations, Mr. Bounds.
Mr. Bounds.
From all of the PT UK community, and I'm just sure, indeed, from the APG community as well. Thank you. Congratulations on tying the knot.
I have to say, there was a lot of love for the Bounds on the social media.
Love for the Bounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was
amounts of love.
I know. So congratulations, Nev and Mrs. Nev. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. The official Mrs. Nev now.
I know. Mrs. Nev.
very
Perhaps she'll be on the show a bit more.
You're right.
Okay.
You'll give us some more feedback.
No, I don't. I still haven't got over the last lot.
Yeah, we like her feedback.
Yeah, indeed.
So up next, then, we haven't got a military segment per se, but we do have a military kind of segment, because it is another one of the interviews that me and Nev took when we were at Bruntingthorpe a few weeks back.
You're talking to some bomber puke. You're not really a mud mover, the JCB driver. What's the matter with you? Couldn't find a fighter pilot?
So we... Anyway, on our tour around the site, we managed to bump into Elliot Atkins, and Elliot is the proud owner of a Tornado GR1. So if you're ready, Matt,
owner, what he flies it.
I will just turn him down quick before he says something.
So here it is. So we are moving on then to a next aircraft on the list that we're trying to get round here. We are at Bruntingthorpe. The sun's out, the weather is fantastic, and I will say it's getting rather warm here. I should have brought suntan lotion, but there we go. Anyway, we're here with Elliot, and we're standing next to rather an iconic aircraft, really, from the Royal Air Force, and it's a Tornado GR1. So Elliot, tell us a bit about the aircraft.
So actually this aircraft never served with the Royal Air Force. It's a very unique. Can something be very unique? It's a unique Tornado GR1. It's a GR1P, and it was delivered directly from BAE Systems to the Royal Aircraft Establishment, which explains the red, white and blue colour scheme. So it went from BAE to the RA at Bedford, where it was used for flight trials and for lots of development work on the Tornado. So things like the terrain following radar were trialled on this aircraft, as well as other things like cockpit voice recognition and a lot of weapons and munitions trials. When Bedford closed in the early 90s, it went down to Boscombe and stayed out its life until 2005, where it was the very last Tornado TR1 to fly.
Wow, so how did you come across this aircraft then, Elliot?
So I was working at Kinetic, who run Boscombe Down. I was actually based up at Malvern, doing a completely non-aviation related job within Kinetic when it came up for disposals, and after a lot of discussion with Kinetic, I ended up purchasing the aircraft and then moving up here to Bruntingthorpe in 2013.
So when you got the aircraft, I mean, we were speaking to one of the kind of the engine engineer guys there earlier, and it wasn't quite in the state it's in now. No,
it was. It had been heavily spares recovered, so it was used for keeping other Tornadoes flying. So the engines came out almost immediately, and then over a period of a few years, lots of the internal systems, lots of the cockpit were removed. So on our website, which I'm going to plug now, za326.com, there are photos showing the state of the aircraft when it arrived. The front cockpit was probably 90% removed. The rear cockpit was probably about 70% removed. So yeah, she was in a bit of a sad state.
I think when most people see these aircraft and stuff here, say at Brunty and that where we are today, in the condition they're in, because looking at this, you know, the Tornado behind us, it looks in really, really good condition, pristine condition almost. And I think a lot of people think that you get this aircraft in pristine condition, flying condition, straight off the bat.
I wish. No, I mean it's testament to the team of guys who have been giving up their time, money, effort to rebuild and restore and get it back the way it's looking now. And yeah, I mean she's probably as complete now externally as you'd imagine. And yeah, it's been great to see. And as I said on the website, we've kind of charted the progress. But it's been good to see the exterior come together. We're now refitting some of the interior systems. So the hydraulics the Tornado has 2 hydraulic systems. One of them is now complete. The second one just needs finishing off. The fuel system needs finishing. DC power system's complete. The AC power system is almost there. It's giving us a few niggles. And then so we're prepping the aircraft ready so that at the point where engines become available, we can fit them in and join in with the fun.
So what is the kind of sort of timescale plan then for obviously getting this to where it can go on doing the taxi runs?
Realistically, we're a few years away. I mean, the Tornado stays in service with the RAF until the end of March next year, 2019. So after that point, we expect engines to start to become available. Obviously, we're a charity, so we're desperately raising money to buy those engines when they become available, and then we're probably a couple of years' work away from that point. So it's years, not months.
On that subject of parts, like you say, engines, stuff like that, how easy is it to do you go on eBay and just or Google Tornado parts? I mean, how easy is it to get parts for the air?
It's actually if your viewers and listeners just go on eBay now and just type Tornado parts, you'd be amazed at what you can find. Yeah, literally. I mean, there are a lot of parts that are starting to go through MOD disposals and end up on sites like eBay and some of the disposals websites. Often that's tricky for us because sometimes they'll be sold in bulk. We don't need 32 of something when we only need one. So waiting for things to come through and sort of filter through the disposals chain is kind of what we've ended up having to do. There are some items, so engines obviously, things like the APU are an expensive item, even second-hand. They're many thousands of pounds. So yeah, we're just keeping our eyes open for everything, and as things come up, we've got funds available, then we buy them, we store them and fit them when we can. Obviously a plea. You know, if any of your viewers, if any of your listeners have got tornado bits down the back of your settee or in your shed, and you'd be amazed what people have turned up with, we'll happily take them off your hands. And equally, if anybody would like to donate, then they can.
How easy is it to find people with the knowledge and stuff like engineers and mechanics to help you with the project?
Actually not too difficult. With the Tornado still being in service and having been in service for the last 40 years, actually there's quite a good pool of engineers and people with experience. Some of the guys who come and help are current and are still serving on Tornado squadrons today. Some of them are haven't been on Tornado for 10, 15 years, but it's amazing how quickly they pick it up. They come back, open a panel and can remember what everything does. So it's it's impressive. But no, actually finding people is not that difficult. Finding people who are happy to commit to come spend their time in all weathers out here is a little bit more difficult.
Now, Elliot, just rounding up, one question we always ask people we interview them at all the air shows we go to. It's a sort of put you on the spot question, but it's if you were given the chance to fly any aircraft, albeit military, commercial, retired or still flying, or even GA, and you were given that seat, what would it be?
Oh, good question. I mean, I would obviously say Tornado, wouldn't I? Tornado, and I'd say Tornado GR1P because it's the only one, so it would have to be that aircraft. Yeah. So to see that fly again would be great. Oh,
that's awesome. Well, Elliot, we wish you all the best for the future with the aircraft. And just quickly before we wrap up, plug that again.
Yeah, so the website is za326.com. And there's a big button on there that says donate, and we'd be really, really grateful. We're also on Facebook if you look for Tornado ZA326, and we're on Twitter as well, Tornado ZA326.
There we go, you heard it here. So thanks, Elliot, for your time, and all the best for the future.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
So I was getting carried away then.
He was too busy watching the television, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely.
Oh, that was fantastic. No, that was really good. It's nice to speak to Elliot, and we do wish him all the best with that project. And again, that website was za326.com if you want to find out.
What a lovely bloke.
Yeah,
great to see him so keen to keep that old wreck looking good.
I take it you've not flown the Tornado, Nick, because you've flown nearly every other military aircraft in production.
No, I've got several hundred hours on the ADVs, but I try not to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it wasn't my favourite airplane, the Tornado.
What? Oh, the scandal.
The scandal.
Well, you have to remember that I went from the Phantom to the F-18, and then after 3 years flying the F-18, I returned to the UK to climb into the bright, shiny new fighter we had acquired to replace the Phantom. Instead, I had to climb into a Tornado F3, which was a bit of a disappointment.
Oh. Any particular reason why, Nick?
Well, it was crap.
Oh.
Okay, fair enough.
The airplane couldn't turn to save its life. I mean, it could run away very fast.
Yeah.
Radar, when we first got it, was pretty rubbish. Half the kit didn't work. The navigators, when we first climbed in, used to take them 22 different selections to lock a target up to fire a missile at them. What a useless piece of rubbish it was. Now, there's a completely different airplane, really, from the ground attack version. And I acknowledge that has, and up to very recently, done some fantastic operational duties. But the fighter variant, perhaps in the very end of its life, when it had been modified almost beyond recognition, might have been able to hold its own up. But compared with the rest of the world's agile, capable aircraft, it was a generation or two behind the drag curve. So, I was never very impressed with it.
Wow. There we go. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
No. I've said it many times.
I can say, yeah. I don't think we've got an exclusive there somehow.
I'm afraid not.
No, but thanks again, Elliot, for speaking to us. I'm sure he's asked me to give him the details when we're going to put this on the show, so I'll be emailing him soon.
Absolutely.
Yep. So we're going to start to wrap up the show then. Now, Matt's got a whisk off somewhere.
I have, yes, absolutely. Got a family barbecue because it's Mum's birthday. Well, it's actually Mum's birthday on Wednesday, but we're having the big barbecue on Saturday.
which is tomorrow.
And you're coming, aren't you? For a little while? Yeah, absolutely. But all of the family have arrived. So
wow.
I've only
Do they know you're famous?
Infamous. I don't know about famous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Indeed. Oh dear, is he drinking he's drinking his beer again? Look, there you go.
Oh.
Yes. Very responsible pilot.
That's actually orange juice.
Is it? Do you know? I was then thinking that's clearly a J2O. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's old golden hen 2.0.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Is that similar to speckled 2.0 as well?
Speckled 2.0.
Yes, I think it would be. Yes, it comes
similar
from the same
brand,
Moreland orange juice manufacturer.
So, well, as I said, we are going to wrap up the show, but we're going to say a big thanks first to everyone who's joined us in the live chat room this evening. All the usual family members in the chat room tonight. So, big thanks to you guys and girls in there, and whatever you do this weekend, have fun and stay safe and stuff.
Indeed.
But quick mention before we do finish the show, don't forget we have our big first ever summer barbecue fly-in, which is happening on the 18th of August this year. We're going to take over the entire airfield at Seething, which is about
and hopefully fill it with planes.
Which is probably about 20 minutes from where we live here, just up the road. An awesome airfield, really well serviced, great runway, and everything you could wish there to hold a summer barbecue. If you want to come and join us on the day, on the 18th of August, please do get in touch with us via email and let us know.
Everybody is welcome, but we do need to know who's coming. We need to know numbers,
so we can know how many burgers and stuff.
Yeah, well, and also we have to tell Seething security as well. So we just need numbers. That's all. Everybody's welcome, but we just need to know who's coming. So
we've got
podcast. If you'd done it the following week, I'd have been on days off.
Oh, dear. Very sorry. Oh, Nick, book a sickie, Nick.
I think he's had enough sick time. I don't think that's a good idea somehow.
Plan a sickie. Anyway,
I've had a few of those lately.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get away with that.
But we've got some P2K members flying in, haven't we?
Yeah.
In various aircraft. I think we're going to have a formation fly-in of PA-28s.
I wonder how many of them actually get there.
Oh, they'll all get there.
Oh, how rude.
Well, they'll all get there because they're obviously.
Well, let's hope none of them
pilots.
end up on Aviation Herald.
Anyway, on that note, so yes,
indeed.
do email the show podcast@planetalkinguk.com. Email us there. Let us know you're coming, and we'll put some extra prawns on the barbie.
Indeed. Graham, are you actually going to the air show then? Because Graham Haley's just said in the chat room, anybody going to be around at the Great Yarmouth Air Show on Sunday? And I'm actually going to be there, but I'm actually going to be driving a bus, believe it or not, because I'm helping the company that's doing the park and ride, because I know who they are. But so anyway, that is where we bring
no deadline, Neil, by the way. Neil's just asking any deadline, but no, we just need to know kind of nearest the time, nearest the 18th of August.
We've got to give them a definitive list, ideally about 2 weeks before the event. So sort of beginning of August, really, I would say, is the deadline.
But we hope to see as many of you there as we can.
Indeed.
I know we're in the end of nowhere here.
The where?
But
okay.
End of Bungie.
Yes, exactly. But it'd be great to see everyone.
The back of Bungie.
The back of Bungie.
So a big, massive, huge, ginormous thank you to the absolute fantastic legend that is Captain Nick. Thank you for joining us on tonight's show.
You are very welcome, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure. You're such fun to be with on the air. I really enjoy myself. Even Captain L wasn't able to dampen the squeeze.
No. Despite his best efforts, yes, absolutely. Indeed.
And give our best to all the family as well as the Woofies as well.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to be very selfish, and I'm going to wish my mum a very happy birthday.
Yes.
So there we are. So
Mama Smith.
Happy birthday, Mama Smith.
Happy birthday, Mama Smith.
And thank you to Barbara and Lane and everyone in the chat room who's all been wishing her a happy birthday as well. So that is where we wrap up. I'm off to go and drink beer and be merry for a little while.
Don't forget, join Matt and whoever I can get to join him next Friday on the show, because Matt's on his own next week, because I am at my stepsister's wedding next Friday, and then on Saturday I shall be flying out to the wonderful island of Malta.
Indeed.
So I shall possibly be on the show the following week,
broadcasting
live.
do feel free to join us if you can be bothered. Yes,
I shall. I'm taking my various recording type equipment out to Malta with me, so I'll join you the following week.
Lovely.
But I shall leave you in Matt's capable hands for next week's show.
Good luck, everyone. Yes. Okay. And from all of us here, it is time
Take
to
care,
say
everyone.
goodbye.
Have a
Say
great
goodbye,
weekend.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's all right. They all know which show you're from, Nick. Don't worry.